Shocking dark crimes in Appalachia, haunting tales that will haunt you forever. In the misty valleys of Appalachia, secrets fester like open wounds. The dense woods, twisted with roots that grapple like fingers, have a way of swallowing sound. Crazy tales of wailing spirits and sightings of ghostly figures keep locals wide-eyed and paranoid. Here, darkness isn't simply the absence of light, it's alive, creeping into hearts and minds like fog rolling over the mountains. What really lurks in the shadows entwined within the thin, moonlit paths? You see, this isn't just about creepy campsites or folklore tales told around bonfires. Rumors of vanished people swirl like leaves in the autumn breeze. A pair of young hikers, once full of life, stepped into these woods and never came out. Their families still search, hearts aching, eyes glazed with fear. And what makes this even more chilling is how frequently it happens. Every year, more names fade, replaced by ghostly whispers in the town square. Some folks say it's an old curse, others claim it's something much more sinister lurking just beyond the trees, but there's also hope buried in these ground-shaking horrors. A local sheriff, steadfast and gritty, stands as a beacon of light, picking through old files like a detective in a noir film, piecing together fragments of terrifying accounts. He feels the mounting pressure of lives hanging in the balance, echoing his own childhood fears of being lost, of disappearing like those before him. Over the years, he has crafted a reputation, the man who won't rest until every stone is turned, every dark secret exposed. Those twisted woods don't stand a chance against his tenacity. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But when a stranger arrives in town, whispering tales of a sighting in the deceptively calm waters of a nearby lake, the sheriff's resolve trembles. Could the stories of the lost finally be unearthing someone that should have remained buried? What secrets does this newcomer carry, and will they change the fate of those still lost in the dark? As twilight descends once more, amplifying the unknown, one thing is certain: the haunting tales of Appalachia are far from over. The shadows deepened around the sheriff as he stared at the newcomer, a tall figure draped in a dark coat that seemed to absorb the fading light. The stranger's eyes glimmered like shards of glass, sharp and cold against the warmth of the evening. Sheriff Dawson felt a knot form in his stomach, tightening as if warning him against trusting this apparition who drifted into their lives with stories that could set the whole town ablaze with fear. "Just your friendly neighborhood wanderer," the stranger said, a sly smile curling at the corners of his lips. The words slid off his tongue like oil, slick and untrustworthy. Dawson could feel the anxiety in the air, thick and suffocating. "What have you found? What do you know?" The sheriff's voice cut through the quiet, a blade forged from years of battling the unknown. The tension hung between them like an electrical charge ready to spark. "It's not just tales, Sheriff," the stranger leaned in closer, the shadows playing tricks on his face. "It's not just the lake. It's the woods, too. They're connected, like the roots of those old trees. The lost souls? They're still here, trapped in the fog." Dawson's heart raced. He had spent years collecting threads of stories, piecing them together to chase away the darkness that clouded his town. A question simmered on his lips, but the stranger was already pushing deeper into the subject, unearthing more buried truths. "Two hikers," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Their laughter echoes through the trees even now, you can still hear it. They didn't just vanish. They were taken." A chill crept up Dawson's spine. He could still remember the faces of those bright hikers laughing, full of life, now missing for months, perhaps more than a year. He felt the weight of their families' despair pressing against his chest. Did this newcomer know things he didn't? Had he caught a glimpse of the creatures lingering in those cursed woods? You think this is a game? Dawson snapped, instinctively stepping forward, his temper flaring. People are still suffering. We need proof. The truth is darker than you realize, the stranger replied, his voice turning low, like a deep growl. What if I told you the lake has a will of its own? It calls to them, calls for others. Dawson's fists clenched, nails biting into his palms. Words churned in his mind, but he couldn't respond. Rage bubbled just beneath the surface, threatening to explode. His thoughts drifted to the stories he heard as a child, the curses, the dangers lurking just outside the edge of light. Every tale was a warning that started to feel like a prophecy. Meet me at the lake tonight, the stranger said, breaking the silence, his gaze unwavering. I'll show you the truth if you dare. The sheriff hesitated. It was reckless, a gamble that could end in madness. But curiosity tugged at him, that awkward mix of dread and anticipation flaring inside like wildfire. He was drawn into the uncertainty, yet he felt the walls of safety begin to crumble beneath the pressure of this man's words. Fine, Dawson replied, his voice low and steady, masking the storm of emotions within. But if this is a trap, what are you afraid of? The flicker of amusement crossed the stranger's face, teasing the edge of fear. The woods or the truth? It can change your life, Sheriff, but only if you face it. As their eyes locked, a stirring fear took root inside Dawson. The night awaited him, thick with fog and secrets. He turned away, heart pounding, feeling the shadows stretch and pulse, hoping for what he might find yet dreading every step forward. What awaited him in the dark? The moon hung low, barely illuminating the twisted path to the lake. As he moved forward, the woods whispered, echoes of promises and despair wrapping around him. He could hear his heart in his ears, pounding like a drum, urging him onward, but with every step, the question loomed larger. Would he emerge with answers or into a deeper abyss of darkness? He couldn't shake the feeling that something had already begun, something waiting for him. Something that knew his name. The wind howled through the trees, an eerie wail that sent shivers down Sheriff Dawson's spine. Each step felt heavier, the ground muddy and treacherous beneath his boots. He could barely see 10 feet ahead, the shadows at the edge of the path stretching out like a warning. As he approached the lake, pulled by an invisible current, a sense of dread coiled tighter within him. The stranger's words echoed in his mind. The lake has a will of its own, it calls for others. The idea that a body of water could possess such power gnawed at his sanity, but curiosity was a cruel master, driving him toward the edge of the water. Suddenly, he halted, frozen in place. A shape shifted in the gloom across the lake, a silhouette that flickered at the edge of his vision, just beyond the reach of the moonlight. Dawson squinted, trying to make sense of what he saw. Was it a trick of the light? Or something darker? His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to turn away and forget this madness. But then a soft sound shattered his thoughts, a whisper carried on the wind, weaving through the trees. It was unmistakable, laughter. High-pitched, innocent, and all too familiar. The laughter of the lost hikers. Mom? A shaky voice called from the shadows. Dawson's heart raced. He was no longer alone. The woods were alive, thrumming with whispers that pulled at his mind. He grabbed his flashlight, almost hesitating, but desperation triumphed. He flicked it on, piercing the darkness, illuminating the path ahead, his breath hitched in his throat. The beam of light danced across the water, then faltered on the distant shore. There stood a figure, a woman in a thin, sheer dress, hair waving as if caught in an unseen breeze. Her eyes were wide, searching, glimmering with an unnatural light. She turned to him, mouth moving as if trying to form words, but no sound came out. What are you? He croaked, fear wrapping around his voice like a vice. Her gaze flickered to something behind him, a moment of pure terror etched across her features. Dawson whipped around, expecting to see the stranger, but the shadows were empty. Panic slammed into him, his instinct screaming for him to run. Yet, he held his ground, compelled to uncover the truth of it all. "Help us!" she finally managed, but the voice slipped away like vapor with the wind. The lake rippled, dark and ominous, reflecting the horror on her face. Dawson edged closer, reaching out. "What happened to you?" "Not just us." Her voice was a choking whisper, barely carried over the rustling leaves. It feeds her words trailed off, fear creeping back into her eyes. He felt the temperature drop sharply, a bite of cold that coursed through his bones. The air thickened, almost suffocating him. Behind her, shadows writhed and twisted. Something lurked beneath the surface. In that moment, he understood. It wasn't just the lake, it was the entire forest, alive with the weight of lost lives, and it was hungry. The laughter of the hikers was a lure, drawing him into a web of despair. What if those lost souls were never meant to be found? As he took a step back, the water lapped hungrily at the shore, grasping for him with slimy fingers of foam. The whisper echoed louder now, growing into a chorus haunting and sorrowful, begging for release. "Dawson!" An urgent voice broke through the cacophony. He spun around to see the stranger, silhouetted against the trees. "You must leave. It's too late for them." Dawson's heart pounded in his chest, battling the urge to confront the man who had lured him here. But the truth twisted viciously in his gut as he faced the lake once more. Was it too late for all of them? He took a deep breath, heart racing as adrenaline surged through him. He had to decide. Could he leave, abandoning the cries of those lost, or was there a chance to uncover what lay beneath the surface? The fog thickened, wrapping around him like a shroud. The decision loomed large, and with it, the faint, ghostly laughter echoed once again. What awaited him in the depths of their dark secrets? The moon remained hidden, the shadows gathering, as Dawson stood at a precipice, a choice between the known and the unknown, the damned and the saved. Would he ever truly know the truth? The stranger took a step forward, his face now illuminated by the flashlight's beam, revealing a tangled mess of fear and urgency. "You don't understand, Sheriff. This place, it's a trap." The warning hung heavy in the night air, pulsating against the darkness that surrounded them. Dawson hesitated, torn between the desperate pleas of the woman standing by the lake and the ominous warning of the stranger. He could see the shadows behind her beginning to form shapes, twisting and swirling, as if they were alive, restless. A chill rippled down his spine. Time was running out. "Tell me what you know," Dawson shouted, his voice barely cutting through the weight of the oppressive silence. The stranger shook his head violently, eyes wide, darting around as if expecting something to leap from the trees. "Everyone who comes here dies, or worse." He glanced back at the lake, a flicker of something dark crossing his features. "They never leave." "Not really." Dawson tried to process the words, his heart pounding heavily in his chest. Every instinct told him to flee. The laughter still echoed, weaving in and out of his thoughts, promising comfort and safety. But beneath it all lurked a malicious intent. His pulse quickened as he recalled the woman's haunted expression, the desperation in her plea. "What feeds?" Dawson asked, his voice steadier now, betraying none of the fear that clawed at him. "Not what? Who?" The stranger's jaw tightened, a combination of anger and grief flashing in his eyes. "The forest itself. It hungers for souls, and it will not be satisfied until it claims more." As he spoke, the wind picked up, a frantic rush coursing through the trees. Dawson could feel the pressure of the forest closing in, a looming shadow that consumed the light. He turned back to the woman, who seemed to sway like a willow in the wind, lost between two realms. It was then that Dawson noticed the glistening trail of tears cascading down her cheeks, all hope drenching into that dark water behind her. "Do you want to escape?" he asked, a desperate thought forming. He could hardly believe he was asking, knowing how wrong the place felt. In a breathless whisper, the woman nodded, her voice barely rising above the rustle of the leaves. But you must come with us, we need you. Without warning, the shadows behind her surged, clawing up from the surface of the water like grasping hands. They twisted and contorted, revealing faces that flickered between anguish and allure. Just as they lunged, the stranger grabbed Dawson's arm, pulling him back. "Run!" he yelled, his voice a desperate command that jolted Dawson into action. Instinct took over, and he dashed through the underbrush, heart racing, driven by adrenaline. The laughter chased him, mingling with whispers that promised safety if he looked back. The shadows poured onto the ground, darkening the path behind him as if trying to pull him back into the abyss. "Right here!" the stranger shouted, motioning to a narrow path that emerged from the trees. Dawson did not question it. He leaped into the sudden opening, but a surge of icy wind slammed against his back, pushing him toward the lake. "Dawson!" The woman's pleading voice rang in his ears, a haunting melody that tugged at his heart. The echoes of laughter twisted together, bonding with terror as he fought against the unseen force trying to drag him down. He had to choose. The path was narrow, littered with doubt and fear. The forest screamed for him, both in danger and in allure. Dawson glanced back at the still lake, the figures thrashing in the water, trapped yet determined. "What's so special about me?" he asked, his thoughts suffocating him. What would it cost him to save them all, or was it already too late? "Because you're the only one who can find the truth." The stranger's voice was urgent, barely audible over the chaos swirling around them. Was he the key? Was the truth buried there, deep within the lake's yearning depths, with the weight of every lost soul anchoring him back? Dawson swung his flashlight toward the lake one last time, illuminating the chaos. Something began to rise. What lurked beneath the surface was awakening, and Dawson knew he didn't have much time to unravel the truth before it was too late to escape. Dawson felt the ground tremble beneath his feet, like a warning tremor as the water churned violently. Fear wrapped around him like a vice. What was surfacing? He wished he could turn and run, throw himself along the narrow path back to safety. But he stood frozen, the flashlight flickering in his trembling hand, illuminating the chaos and shadows, wrestling with reality. The surface of the lake had turned murky, discolored by whatever dark secret lay beneath. Something gigantic heaved itself upward, an arm. A head? A ghastly silhouette loomed in the darkness, its ghastly form barely discernible from the deep, swirling waters. Another spine-chilling laugh mingled with the sounds of the lake, echoing through the air. Was it mocking him? "Dawson!" The stranger's voice cut through, raw and edged with desperation. "We have to move. Now." But the pull of the lake was intoxicating, almost magnetic. Dawson stumbled backward, torn between two worlds, the tangible path that promised escape and the murky depths that promised understanding, or so he thought. The lake's whispers crept into his mind, sweet and sinister, tempting him to listen, luring him closer. "Come closer, we know what you seek, find the truth." The shadows twisted, flickering like flames, inviting him into their dance. "No!" he shouted, regaining balance by sheer will. He gripped the flashlight tighter, casting beams of light atop the ghastly reflection. Suddenly, the night air shifted, thickening with dread. The stranger pulled him toward the narrow path, the trees looming closer, now warped and twisted as if breathing heavily around them. "They know you're here, Dawson. We don't have time to waste. They will not stop until you give in." Dawson glanced once more at the lake. The head that had surfaced was now grotesque, slick with water, eerily resembling the lost souls that spoke from its depths, desperate, trapped, and longing. He shut his eyes against the image, pushing forward as adrenaline surged in his veins. "Where do we go?" Dawson gasped, the path barely widening before them as shadows twisted ominously overhead. "Follow me. Stick close." The stranger's voice was a tether, a lifeline in the chaos, guiding him toward the forest's edge as branches clawed at them. Every step felt heavy, pulsing with the earth's heartbeat, vibrating with ominous warnings. With each hurried glance back, the shadows grew bold, wrapping around his ankle, pulling, pleading. He could almost hear them whispering names, faces, promises. Just one more soul, one more. The stranger surged ahead, practically dragging Dawson as if the shadows were already attempting to claim him. You have to believe in the light. The forest thrives on fear, it will consume you. Don't look back. Just as they approached a clearing, a piercing scream shattered the night, the sound cutting through the foliage like a knife. Dawson's heart stopped. Did you hear that? He breathed, heart racing. Someone's still out there. There's nobody. It's a trick. The stranger insisted, urgency flashing in his eyes. It's all a ploy to draw you in. We must go. But Dawson hesitated, torn within himself between abandoning the search or risking everything for a sliver of hope for the unknown. The scream echoed once more, horrifying and desperate, beckoning him. I can't leave them, he whispered, the weight of every soul pressing on his shoulders. Dawson. The stranger's voice was stern, reality crashing back in. You can't save them all. We need to get away from here before it's too late. The laughter rose again around them, reverberating through the very trees, a symphony of sorrow and temptation. Dawson felt as if the woods were alive, watching, waiting for his next move. A fierce wind picked up, screeching past him, urging him forward, yet at the same time holding him in place. And then, clarity struck him like a lightning bolt. The truth he was searching for wouldn't come without sacrifice. With one last glance at the shadows inching closer, Dawson took a breath, resolving himself. We're going back. He shouted defiantly, turning back toward the deep darkness of the trees. Dawson, no. The stranger cried out, but his resolve hardened. Darkness or light, he needed to walk into the true depths of what haunted this place. What awaited him in the stillness? Would he find the truth, or had he just sealed his fate with the souls beyond? The forest shivered with anticipation, shadows gathering around him like a storm about to unleash its fury. They stood at the precipice of revelation and ruin, and Dawson had no idea which side would prevail. But perhaps, just perhaps, in uncovering the past, they might illuminate a path to freedom. And as he took that step back into the inky abyss, a new voice whispered a chilling promise that sent shivers cascading through him. You've chosen, let the reckoning begin. Dawson plunged into the darkness, swallowing hard against the night air thick with tension. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, warping and twisting into grotesque shapes, their gnarled branches seeming to reach for him. Every instinct screamed for him to turn back. But the pull of the voices, the lost souls beckoning him, was too potent to resist. Wait! He called, his voice a thin thread against the encroaching night. The shadows danced around him, whispering secrets he could barely grasp. He felt the presence of eyes, thousands of them piercing through the veil of darkness. Come find the truth, the voices wove in and out, wrapping around his mind, anchoring him deeper into the forest. Dawson! The stranger's shout cut through the veil, harsh and urgent. You don't have to do this. He hesitated, torn between the possibility of salvation and the looming dread that promised damnation. With a shaky breath, he pushed further into the shadows, determined to discover the source of the cries that gnawed at his soul. As he moved deeper, the scent of decay hung heavy in the air, clinging to him like a shroud. The whispering intensified, becoming a cacophony, wrapping his head with dark promises. And then, through the dim light of his struggling flashlight, he saw a dilapidated cabin creaking under the weight of its own history. His heart raced. The screams had come from there, he was sure of it. But what lay inside? Were there souls trapped in despair? Or were they simply figments of his imagination, conjured by the shadows? Dawson! Get out of there! Panic clawed at the stranger's voice, but Dawson's resolve felt like stone. He stepped forward, pulse quickening. The door creaked open with a soft groan, revealing a darkness that felt alive. Crossing the threshold, the air thickened, and Dawson's skin prickled with unease. Shadows seemed to stretch and bend, reaching out toward him, eager and hungry. He tightened his grip on the flashlight, its beam flickering weakly before him. Help us, the voices cooed, now sounding desperate, pleading. He could make out silhouettes in the corners, faceless forms watching him, lost and tormented. Who are you? He called, desperation tinging his voice. What do you want? We've waited so long. A figure flickered into view, a woman, pale and ethereal, her eyes filled with sorrow and pain. You are the one. What do you mean? Dawson stepped back, heart racing. I can't help you. You can. Her voice was soft yet powerful, pulling at him like the undertow of a raging river. You must free us. Only you can break the curse. A chilling realization slammed through him. Were they trapped, bound to this place by a wrong he could not fathom? But in the depths of his mind, a question flickered: what would be the cost of such freedom? No. The stranger's voice crashed into his thoughts like thunder. Dawson, this is a trap. But it was too late. The cabin shifted around him as if it were a living being, breathing and alive. The walls pulsed, closing in, shadows creeping closer. They were hungry, seeing him as the final morsel needed to break the chains holding them captive. Let me help you. He shouted, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him, his body alive with dread, with desperation trailing his every word. The woman reached forward, her ghostly fingers brushing against his hand, cold as death. You must choose, Dawson. Feel the pain we felt or join us in endless suffering. Before he could respond, the cabin trembled violently, splintering as shrieks erupted from every corner. The shadows curled and twisted, lunging at him, and Dawson felt the ground shake beneath him. He was trapped. There was no way out. As he braced for impact, his mind raced, thoughts sparking like fireworks in the dark. Could he really be the key to their salvation? Would his choice lead to freedom or damnation? Dawson's breath stalled as he grappled with the fantastical reality unfolding around him. Then, a shadow surged forward, plunging into him like ice, rooting him in place. Suddenly, everything grew quiet. The silence was deafening. The cabin held its breath, waiting. The souls watched, their fates hinged on his next move, and the weight of their tragedy pressed on his heart like a stone. What would he decide? Would he embrace the shadows or defy the depths of their despair? Choose wisely, the whisper echoed in the silence, as Dawson felt the ancient darkness clinging tighter, spiraling him into uncertainty. And in that moment of stillness, he was faced with a haunting truth: his choices may be the very darkness he feared, but failing to act might lead to an even darker outcome. The silence shattered like glass as a blinding flash erupted from the center of the cabin. Dawson stumbled backward, his pulse racing. The ethereal woman dissolved into wisps of shadows, merging with the frantic darkness that now engulfed him. He could feel the air crackle, alive with an electric tension. It was as if the cabin itself was awakening, furious and bitter. Dawson. The stranger's voice clawed through the chaos, frantic and full of dread. Get out. You're in danger. But how? The walls pulsed like a beating heart, a sick rhythm that called to him, urging him to stay. Dawson felt the darkness tugging at his very essence, seeking to swallow him whole. Memories, lost moments from his life flickered in and out of his mind like the dying light of his flashlight. Then, a booming voice echoed from the deepest shadows, filled with a terrifying authority. You cannot flee, child of flesh. You are bound here now, part of our tale. Dawson's heart raced, he was suffocating under the weight of the existence that surrounded him. He turned towards the door, the faint glow of moonlight shining through the cracked wood, but it felt like miles away. Shadows lurked in every corner, twisting into hideous forms that swirled with whispered curses. What do you want from me? He yelled, desperation cracking his voice. It's not what we want, the voice hissed, slithering around him. You hold the key. Free us, and you may yet escape. Bind us, and we will claim you. The figures emerged once more, faces contorted in anguish. Some were familiar lost loved ones, others were strangers with eyes full of despair. Their haunting pleas wrapped around Dawson, pulling him closer to the brink of madness. Save us, they cried in unison, their voices a chilling melody of suffering. Panic rose in his throat. He felt the world slipping away, flashes of the past blending with the haunting cries of the present. The weight of the decision bore down on him. Did he truly have the power to save them? And at what price? Feel our pain, the dark throng urged, their shadows elongating, creeping toward him, enveloping him in the grasp of their despair. Dawson closed his eyes against the rising tide of their misery, every scream like a dagger in his heart. Then, abruptly, the silence returned. The screams faded. The shadows fell still, hovering expectantly. Dawson's breath came out in shaky bursts. They were waiting for him, a collective weight of hopes and fears resting on his frail shoulders. All he had to do was choose, but somewhere in the back of his mind, a flicker of suspicion ignited. What if this was a ruse, a cruel trick to ensnare him forever? What if their salvation led to his own doom? The stranger's warning echoed persistently. He needed to find clarity, a beacon of truth amidst the suffocating fog. "Do I save you?" Dawson whispered, the words heavy on his tongue. "Or do I save myself?" The chains of his indecision began to rattle, shaking the very foundations of the decrepit cabin. The shadows writhed, forming a swirling vortex of despair around him, growing tighter, demanding his answer. Then the woman reappeared, her sorrowful eyes reflecting the horror all around. "Trust in the light, Dawson. Only you can illuminate the darkness." A surge of strength flooded through him, burning bright against the encroaching shadow. Within that moment of clarity, he felt it a flicker of hope. "I want to give in to you." The shadows screamed in rage as he focused, drawing on the strength he didn't know he had. "I'm not afraid of the dark," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The cabin rocked violently, the walls creaking and moaning as though protesting his defiance. But then muffled laughter echoed, deep and sinister. "Foolish boy," the voice thundered. "You do not know what you have awakened. This is only the beginning." The shadows recoiled, ripping away like a curtain being drawn. Dawson felt their cold breath retreat, but he knew it wasn't over. The ominous laughter vibrated through his bones, promising that the real horrors were still to come. With the light of determination burning in his heart, he raced for the door, adrenaline surging through his veins as he thrust it open. But the dark forest lay ahead, more sinister than before, and he knew that the journey had just begun. "Will your light hold strong, Dawson?" The voice lingered, echoing malevolently in the night. He stepped into the dark woods, feeling the cold sweat of doubt settle over him. The abyss still awaited, but deep within, a fire danced, an ember of courage ignited by fear, lighting the path forward. But could a single flicker withstand the oncoming storm? The forest was alive, and the souls entwined within it were far from finished. Branches clawed at Dawson as he plunged into the forest, their fingers gnarled and twisted like the faces he had just witnessed in the cabin. Shadows flitted around him, whispering secrets, each one a chilling reminder of the malevolence that loomed just beyond his peripheral vision. He swallowed hard, his mouth dry as dust, and ventured deeper into the night. The air felt thick, like molasses, wrapping tightly around him, squeezing out any notion of rationality. Each step he took sent a flare of uncertainty through him. He could still hear the whispers, distant moans tinged with hopelessness. Was it him they wanted to save, or was he just another unwitting pawn caught in their tragic game? He glanced over his shoulder. The cabin's door now loomed like a forgotten memory, a portal to a world that felt increasingly detached from reality. The echo of the shadow's laughter loomed large in his thoughts, wrapping around his mind like a fog. "You do not know what you have awakened." Those words reverberated, clawing at his resolve. The forest transformed. Trees twisted impossibly, their bark darkening like bruises under a swiftly fading sky. A soft flickering caught his eye, a ghostly glow darted through the underbrush. His heart raced with trepidation, but curiosity pulled him forward. Each footfall brought him closer to the light, a beacon amidst the looming terror. As he drew nearer, the air grew colder, and a shiver traveled down his spine. A clearing formed ahead, illuminated by an otherworldly luminescence. Shadows danced wickedly at its edges, but the light within seemed to pulse with a gentle, inviting rhythm. Dawson felt a magnetic pull, an urge to step inside. Yet doubt slithered back in, gnawing at the edge of his courage. What if it's a trap? He muttered to himself, halting just outside the clearing. What if this light is just a ruse? The shadows flickered around him, twisting and warping, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Join us, find your purpose, shut up," he shouted, clenching his fists. "I'm not here to play your games." A gust of wind answered, swirling around him, causing the shadows to flare angrily. They surged forward as if resentful of his defiance. The light pulsed again, casting a soothing warmth that repelled the encroaching darkness, but its glow dimmed in the face of the shadow's ferocity. With a deep breath, he stepped into the clearing, enveloped by the warmth. A figure emerged from the light, a young girl, ethereal and bright. Her eyes sparkled with clarity, but her expression was solemn. "You must choose," she spoke, her voice like a gentle breeze, yet heavy with the weight of innumerable souls. "Will you save us, or will you turn back into the dark?" Dawson hesitated. "I don't have the power to save anyone. I'm just one man." The girl's features softened, and she stepped closer. "You have strength that you have yet to uncover. But time grows short. The more time you waste, the more souls will be entangled in the darkness." He felt the shadows retreat momentarily, trembling at the edge of the clearing, as if waiting for his decision. Sweat dripped down his brow, his heart thundering with uncertainty. What did he truly know about the fate of these souls? What if saving them meant losing himself? Then, a voice shattered the stillness, a booming roar full of wrath and despair. "You are mine, Dawson. You cannot decide their fate without sealing your own doom." The girl's expression tightened. "The darkness seeks to contest your choice. Do not falter. Your light can banish the shadows, but only if you believe." He grasped at her words, feeling the warmth of newfound hope igniting within him. "I don't know what I believe." "Then find it," she urged. "Seek within yourself, for the answer lies there." With a surge of determination, he closed his eyes, focusing on the flickering hope within. Yet darkness curled around his thoughts, whispering doubts. He fought against it, pushing back with all the strength he could summon. A deafening silence grew, wrapping around him like a blanket, only to be pierced by a haunting shriek that sliced through the stillness. The shadows surged again, more powerful than ever. Dawson felt a pulse of terror rise, making his chest tight. "Make your choice now, child of flesh," roared the voice of the shadows. "Now or never." The forest seemed to hold its breath, the air electrified with anticipation. Could courage and clarity banish the dark? Do I embrace the light or drown in their shadows? He pondered, but before his decision could take form, the shadows lunged. And suddenly, the choice was no longer just his own. Dawson felt the shadows extend their grasp, and every instinct in him screamed to run. The threatening dark claws raked across his skin, icy and alive, but the girl's luminous presence held him steady. "You can fight them," she exclaimed, her voice resonating like a bell in the winds. "They thrive on fear. Ignite your light." In that moment, an anger unlike anything he had ever felt surged through him. It surged like a fire under layers of ice. He remembered why he had come here, to uncover truths, to face his darkest fears. Without thinking, he opened his mouth and shouted, "Leave. You don't own me." The shadows flinched at his defiance, momentarily hesitating. The girl stepped closer, her light brightening. "That's it. Feel the power inside you." Beside him, the shadows shrieked in fury. Their sound was a cacophony of sorrow and rage, filling the clearing with an electric tension. Dawson focused on the warmth inside, allowing it to swell and expand like an unstoppable wave. Now! The girl cried, and in a burst of instinctive rage, Dawson thrust his hands forward, envisioning the brightness within him radiating outward. A beam of light erupted from his palms, illuminating the clearing with a blinding brilliance. The shadows recoiled, twisting violently, the whispers turning into screams of anguish. Dawson's heart hammered as he saw the darkness begin to dissipate, swallowed by the light. He felt alive, empowered, not just a man but something larger than himself. This was purpose, and it filled his veins like wildfire, but just as triumph surged, a dark figure materialized in the haze of shadows. A twisted silhouette, vaguely human, with eyes like pits of despair, loomed ominously over them. "Foolish boy!" It hissed, its voice dripping with venom. "You think your light can drive me away? I was born of this darkness." Dawson's determination wavered momentarily, a chill brushing against his spine as fear threatened to creep back in. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, trying to hold on to his confidence. The figure smiled, a grotesque curl of lips devoid of warmth. "What I want is your soul, child. You will embrace the shadows or they will consume you." In that instant, doubt coursed through Dawson, and anguish gripped his heart. Was this battle merely a prelude to his inevitable surrender? The echoes of lost souls began whispering again, each plea wrenching and raw. Faces etched with sorrow emerged at the edges of his mind, reminding him of so much lost potential, wasted breaths. "No," he inhaled sharply. "I am not yours to take." With every ounce of will, he thought of those voices, the girls, the lost, the suffering who were waiting for redemption, their cries imbued with urgency. A sudden clarity struck him, the choice was his. It always had been. An electric power surged through his fingers, igniting a ferocity he had never known. "Let them go," Dawson shouted, unleashing the bright pulse of light that flared violently around him. The shadows writhed in agony, torn between the light and the deep, unending darkness of their own creation. The figure's snarls echoed, caught between rage and panic. "You cannot save them. You cannot save yourself." The girl reached out, her voice steady amidst the chaos. "Trust yourself. Embrace your purpose." He fought against the tide of despair, knowing he had the strength to rewrite the end of his story. The light expanded, burning brighter as it surged forth like an unstoppable wave, swallowing the darkness whole, but just before the shadows were consumed, the twisted figure roared one last time, as if the very fabric of reality trembled. "You think you've won? The darkness is not so easily banished, Dawson." The shadows raged, swirling like a storm above him, casting shadows deeper than he ever imagined. As the light clashed with the darkness, Dawson felt a crack beneath his feet, a fissure erupting with coldness, a chasm threatening to swallow him and everything he fought for. He gasped in horror, and in that heartbeat, understood the truth: this struggle was far from over. The void loomed beneath, whispering that the light could falter. As the shadows surged one last time, a split formed in Dawson's resolve. Could he truly summon the strength to face what lay ahead, a confrontation bigger than him, one etched into the very fabric of his being? The darkness roiled and beckoned, insisting he fall into its depths. But as he descended toward the darkness, the glimmer of the girl's light flickered at the edge of his vision. "Remember, the choice is always yours, Dawson." And then it all went dark. What awaited him below in that unyielding abyss? Dawson felt himself caught, falling through endless darkness, panic clawing at his insides. Every heartbeat echoed through the void, resonating with the deep truths he had been fighting against. Darkness threatened to consume his thoughts, to drown him in despair. But then he remembered the girl, the light, the souls calling out for salvation. They hadn't he lost hope, he couldn't he let them down. That he focused on the faint flicker of warmth within him. It pulsed like a heartbeat, momentarily pushing away the despair swirling around him. "I choose light," he shouted defiantly, words escaping his lips like a flare illuminating the midnight sky. In response, a shimmering light erupted around him, radiating like sunbeams breaking through storm clouds. The darkness momentarily recoiled, the chilling whispers fading into silence. With renewed determination, Dawson drew upon every ounce of willpower, channeling the light within him to fight back against the endless abyss. Suddenly, he found himself on solid ground again. The shadowy figure loomed before him, twisted and writhing. The shadows were more alive than he had ever experienced, clawing at his chest, but the bright glow within him shielded him. "I'm not afraid of you," Dawson declared, his voice steady. The darkness hesitated, momentarily intrigued by the strength emanating from him. "You think you can wield that light against me? You are merely a child lost in a nightmare." "It's not just my light," Dawson shouted back, feeling the warmth grow, the flickers growing into radiant flames that began to pulse in sync with his heart. "It belongs to them. The lost, the forgotten. And I'm not here to be part of your darkness." As he spoke, memories flooded his mind, faces of the lost hikers, the grieving families, the townspeople looking for answers. Each one fueled his resolve, and with that heartening power, he thrust his hands forward. A wave of brilliant light surged from him, clashing violently against the darkness. The shadowy figure screamed, a sound that ripped through the air, both furious and anguished. "You cannot break this curse, boy. It is eternal." But Dawson stood firm, determined to rewrite the story. The light pulsed, stretching infinitely as it began to drown the shadows in waves of brilliance, forcing them back into the corners of the abyss. "I told you," he shouted, voice filled with conviction. "We are stronger together." The ghostly figures of the lost emerged, drawn by the struggle, their faces turning toward him in mortal clarity. They joined the fray, their spirits intertwining with the beams of light that raced from Dawson, and together they created a powerful tide, overwhelming the darkness that had trapped them for so long. With a final surge, the darkness shattered, fracturing into crystalline fragments. The shadowy figure roared in fury as it was pulled apart, its essence dissipating into the night, the laughter twisted into screams that faded into silence. Dawson stood amidst the remnants, breathless but alive. Light surrounded him, warm and freeing. The forest shifted, the trees relaxing as the weight of despair began to dissipate. The souls of the lost shimmered in the air, ethereal forms emerging healed and whole. "Thank you," they whispered together, voices filled with gratitude. "You have broken the curse." As they merged back into the earth, the woods transformed, becoming vibrant and alive once again. The fog began to lift as dawn broke over the horizon, golden light flooding through the trees. The woods, once a place of nightmares, now wrapped him in a blanket of healing warmth. Sheriff Dawson stepped out of the woods, no longer just a man haunted by fear, but a beacon of light armed with hope and purpose. He breathed in deeply, feeling the fresh air fill his lungs. The chains that had bound him, both past and present, were finally broken. As he walked toward town, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey he'd undergone. He had faced his darkest fears and emerged asleep no more, ready to help others reclaim their lost voices. The townsfolk began to stir as he emerged from the forest, a mix of relief and joy washing over their faces. They rushed toward him, eager to know what happened, and he felt the echoes of their hope merging with his. "Together," he declared, "we will ensure that no more names fade into those woods. Together, we'll make sure the light never dims again." And as he spoke those words, something changed in the air, a deepening sense of renewed purpose drawing them all closer. This was just the beginning. That if you love this thrilling journey through the darkness, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will grip your heart. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover the light hidden in these tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us illuminate their hearts together.